planning. And just to have a quick recap of the same, if you remember what we are doing uh, in the we in this course, actually we have two parts. One is about planning, journal planning of a project, right? Planning in a project, and the second half would contain or would be focused on project schedule management only, right? So we have already started the project planning part, in which, first of all, we saw the pre-planning, pre-project planning thing, in which we saw that high-level planning is done and business case and benefit management plan and other strategic documents are prepared, right? And then we identify the high level requirements, high level assumptions, high level constraints, high level risk. This all is done before or during project initiation. And this process actually culminates or conclude is concluded when we issue a project charter or we authorize the project through any other document, right? And then after the initiation of the project, we enter into the upfront planning. And what do we mean by upfront planning? Means the planning done right in the beginning of the project before execution is started. Fine. At this at this stage of planning, you know, first thing that we need to do is to identify the development approach and the project life cycle. And based on that development approach and life cycle, the detail of the planning would be governed or would be uh, dependent upon the detail of the planning would be dependent upon the development approach that we adopt. If we are going to have a predictive life cycle or predictive development approach, in that case we'll try to complete as much of planning as possible right upfront, right in the beginning. But if this is a change driven development approach, again then our level of planning or the detail of the planning would be not that much. We'll start with the high level planning in the beginning, and we'll keep refining our plan throughout the project. But at the end of the day, what we get, either we get a project management plan and a project backlog, maybe, right? In case of adaptive projects, we generally say that, a project backlog is the document that acts as a plan. And in case of project management plan, predictive, we may have a specific project management plan that would include the 12 subsidiary plans and the baselines and everything. Now, we may have we may have a project management plan even in an adaptive life cycle, but there we want the scope that is defined in case of adaptive life cycle is written in a project backlog, right, rather than a formalized scope statement. I hope you remember this all.
Sure.
Okay, so here the first process that we did was, in the planning process group, the first thing that we studied was developing a project management plan, right? Let me focus on it here. So first thing that we covered was developing a project management plan. And in this plan, we saw that this is just a blank folder in the beginning. And here we define two things, that is the development life cycle and the development approach, project life cycle and the development approach. And based on that, we actually start the rest of the planning thing. Okay. So in the last lecture, we started off planning of scope management or planning our scope, right? There are four processes that we need to cover in this. One process, the first process is called the plan scope management. Like any other, aspect of the project, if you remember this, I had taught in the last class as well as in the last semester, that for every aspect or knowledge area of a project, like scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, or communication, or risk, or procurement, or stakeholder, the first thing that we do is to prepare a plan for that, right? And this plan would contain three things. I hope you remember that: how to plan part, how to execute part, how to monitor and control part. So here too, in case of scope management, the first thing that we do is to prepare a scope management plan as well as a requirement management plan. Then we enter into the next process, that is collecting the requirements. This was the process that actually we started, and we left our discussion at this process, the collection of the requirements. Once all the requirements are collected, then we define our scope based on those requirements, and then we will actually break down that scope into a WBS, or in case of change driven, maybe into epics, maybe features and user stories that we'll cover today, inshallah, by the end of this lecture. So now let's see what was there. In the first few slides, we cover, or we studied, what is a scope management, what is difference between product scope and the project scope, right? I hope you remember that. What's the difference among these two? After that, we started off with the processes. The first process was planning the scope management, and the outcome or the output of this process was a scope management plan and a requirement management plan, right? These two things are produced or created during this process. And then the next process is collecting the requirements. And in this process, ji sir? Hello. Okay. So in the next process, that is collecting the requirements, we will have two major documents or artifacts. One is requirement documentation, and second one is requirement traceability metrics. So after that, we still have further processes defining the scope, and here we will get the project scope statement, and then finally the creation of a WBS, where we will get a scope baseline. Actually, the scope baseline is a combination of three things. Can someone tell me what all is included in the WBS?
Sir, WBS dictionary, uh,
Scope statement, WBS dictionary, WBS and WBS dictionary.
WBS dictionary, right, sir? So, CR, are you there?
sir, ये बात आ
Sir,
रही है?
Yes, sir.
जी जी,
सर ये
okay,
बात
see,
Assalamu alaikum,
uh,
sir.
well, sir.
I'm in the class, but just कि बार बार ये बंद हो रहा है तो बस मैं
Okay, you can watch the
just telling
recording
you.
later on. Okay, 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 I understand, sir. I understand. You are sitting in the car, actually. Okay, so CR, please do note down one mark for it was Ramjat who answered me.
Time period.
No,
Sir.
you only said that it's a WBS dictionary. That was one part. There has
आधा
to be
देना
three
सर
parts.
आधा
नहीं नहीं
सर
आधा
आप
भी नहीं
आधा
बनता.
देना
One by three भी नहीं बनता. Okay, so uh, right, sir. Please, okay. Today, I just request you guys to please participate as much as you can, and trust me, today you will get, like, I wish to give one mark at least to all of you, right? One mark for everyone. So if you will participate, trust me, you are going to get, right? So one has already got it. Right. So creation of WBS would be our fourth process. Then here, the first process that we covered was planning the scope management. And in this process, we get two things, the scope management plan and the requirement management plan, which is also known as business analysis plan. Okay, then we entered into the second process, that was collection of the requirements. Here we saw that, this is the actually this is the first step towards uh, you know towards actual planning. Why? Because this is the step that will give you all the requirements that are there in the project, right? And here we will try to identify as many requirements as possible, because it's better to gather all the requirements in the beginning. Why? Because if you remember, changes in the requirement at a later stage would cost us a lot. You know, if you have already planned so many things, and even if you have started so many things, like you have started the execution of so many things, and you are, let's say, halfway through the project, and at that stage, if requirements are changed, or if new requirements are identified, in either case, it will, uh, cost you a lot. It will ask you for a lot of rework and replanning. So we don't want that. We want that whatever requirements are there, they should come up in right in the beginning. And we will try to document those requirements in the requirement documentation. right? So this is what we actually started in the last lecture. The second output of this requirement collection process is requirements traceability matrix, right? We'll talk about this. This is a very important matrix or tool, and very helpful and powerful tool that we actually use. So we'll talk about this in a while, but let's focus on the requirement documentation first, right? Okay, now in the requirement collection process, this was again Humayun who actually tried to act like these two characters and told us that at the end of the day, customers, they don't know how to tell the requirements, and team doesn't know how to gather the requirements. So if this is the scenario, in that case you are actually planning to fail. You are actually heading towards a big trouble. So try to gather as many requirements as possible. And it is your duty as a project manager, as a project management team, or as a project team member, that you ask the customer about the requirements. Look, customers generally are not experts of that area. That's why they hire you, for a project. Let's say it's a web development project, or it's a construction project, or whatever the project it may be. Customer might not be knowing the technical details of that. So it is you who will put those requirements in front of the customer. Do you need this as well? Do you mean this as well? For example, for a layman person like me, if I want to have or develop a website, for me everything that is www something is a website, right? And I don't know. And if I'm an Android user, or if I also only work on Windows, you know, uh, I might have never thought about that platform of a platform in two ways. Like, am I using this thing on a laptop or computer, or am I using this website, or I want to open this website on a mobile device, right? In both cases, technical details might differ. Similarly, for me, website is just a website. When I open it on a computer, or whether I open it on a mobile device, it doesn't matter. But actually, it does. Similarly, like operating system can be a different operating, like it might not be an Android system, right? In case of iPhone, something, or in case of Mac, you may have a different platform altogether. So you need to ask these details from the customer. The customer is just a layman. So please be careful, be watchful about the requirements right in the beginning. So that is really important. Okay, during the collection of the requirements, if you remember, I told you one more thing, that you just don't focus on the requirements of the product that you are going to create. Like, your focus must not only be the features of the product. Like, if I'm constructing a website or any app, my focus should not only be about the features or functionality of this product. Similarly, if I'm constructing a building, my focus should not only be the construction or the details of the construction work or the details of the building only. My focus should also be towards any other requirements, any legal requirements, procedural requirements. And I gave you an example of installation of a centralized air conditioning system in Beria Business School, let's say. And a project team might come enter into our class and say, sir, please leave the class, we need to install this. Or a work is being done on a class which is just adjacent to our classroom, and there's a lot of noise there. So it should be this type of requirements, that whenever a team needs to work in the building, they need to inform that department maybe a week before that, so that they can plan their activities and classes accordingly, right? So such kind of requirements should also be gathered. I hope this is clear.
Sir,
Yes,
this
sir.
is clear.
Okay, right. Then we talk about certain, uh, competing requirements. Like, the very classic example is, if you want to enhance the, or sorry, if you want to reduce the duration, or you want to finish a project quicker, obviously it is going to raise the cost, you know. So now, completing a project within time is also the one of the requirements or objectives, and completing project within a minimum budget is also one of the requirements. So which requirement you would prefer? In this case, whenever you have competing requirements, not only at this stage at the start of the project, but also during the course of the project, uh, you know you need to balance, you need to prioritize which requirement is more important to you. Many a times is your business case, your charter, or your sponsor would tell you or guide you that which of these are or is more important for the top management or for the overall objective or the strategic objective of that project, right? Sometimes we want to launch some product or project, within few months, and at that stage, if you will try to reduce the cost, what would happen? Because of the delay in the launch, you will suffer or the organization will suffer higher cost. Like if by reducing the cost and increasing the schedule, let's say I'm saving 10,000, but because of this delay, the organization may suffer maybe 10 million loss. I hope this is clear.
Sir, that's clear.
Right. So, balancing the requirement would depend on the priority of each of the requirements. Which requirements has got higher preference, higher priority than the others, right? So that is very important. You not only collect the requirement, you also prioritize the requirements. Okay. Now, next thing is, many a times many people or the stakeholders, they would like or they would try to add requirements that are not actually part of the project charter, or they do not match the purpose of the project. So in that case, here's a general guideline that we discussed just towards end of last lecture, or probably this was our last slide. And we saw that if whenever a stakeholder throws a requirement towards us, we need to check or evaluate that requirement against the business case. That means if a requirement is something that is outside, falling outside the business case, which tell us the reason for a project, why a project was initiated. So if a requirement has come that is outside this reason, please don't entertain that, right? Similarly, if a requirement is outside the authorized project charter or the authorized project scope, the high level scope, obviously, in that case too, don't entertain such a requirement. Now, if you remember, right now, the first process is, please focus on this, and I would request one of you to please explain this for me again, right? After listening to this, I will ask you now who would explain, and one of you should explain to get the mark. Now, you see, throughout planning, you need to understand or you need to keep two perspectives in mind. One, we are doing this planning for the first time. Like right now, we were assuming that the project has just started and this is first time we are collecting the requirements. Once we'll do that, after the requirements are created, the next step would be to define the scope based on these requirements, right? So preparation of a scope statement is next to collection of requirements. So if this is first time that you are gathering the requirements, or if it is first time that you are starting the planning, in that case, you won't be having a scope statement with you. However, if you remember, we studied a concept of rolling wave planning, and in that we saw that, okay, we actually keep revising or we keep sometimes plan a thing just in new future and leave the detailed planning of things that are far in future for later planning. So if that is the case, in this case we will not be planning the project for the first time. actually we might have already planned everything, like most of the things, 90% of the things, and we might have even started the execution. Now, during execution, once we get more information under the concept of progressive elaboration, we actually need to refine our plan that we had left, at a higher level during first time planning. In this case, we will be having scope statement with us. Is this point clear to everyone?
Sir, it's clear.
Okay, so anyone who want to explain it other than Sir Amjad? Right, Sir
No,
Amjad?
sir, I'm not understand. I don't
Okay.
understand that scope part. Like you
Oh,
mean like in the first time we don't have the scope, but we have just keep going on, like leave the detail later, then we reviews
no,
it
no, no, no,
again, then
no,
we
no,
have
no,
the
no, no, no. I didn't say that. Look, I'm saying the first step here is collection of the requirements, right? Mali, is it clear?
yes.
Okay, once requirements are gathered, what next we do? We will
Uh
prepare a scope statement. Like now
yes.
all
Scope
right?
baseline.
No, scope statement first, and then next is the
Okay.
scope baseline, right? The third step here is the scope baseline. So now, in this case, when we are gathering the requirements, we don't have a scope statement right now. We will prepare the scope statement after the requirements are gathered. Mali, is it clear?
You mean we collect the requirement first, then we have the scope statement.
Then we prepare the scope statement from those requirements. Okay, so this is when we do the planning for the first time. But do you remember we keep refining our plan based on the rolling wave planning concepts? Do you remember that, Mali?
Uh
No. Okay, I've taught you this thing in cost, not only once, okay,
no
many a
no.
time, many a times.
Actually
Okay,
in summer
no, no, not
in
in
some
summer. In summers, not only in summers, but before that too, and even in this class as well. Okay, Mali, please try to revise the concept of rolling wave planning, progressive elaboration, right?
uh,
Okay, that will explain everything to you actually. Okay, so can anyone explain this point, the point that I just elaborated here? No.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
Ji, ma'am, please go ahead.
सर आपने बताया कि अगर हम प्लानिंग कर रहे हैं किसी प्रोजेक्ट के लिए स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम तो उसके लिए पहले हम रिक्वायरमेंट्स की कलेक्शन करेंगे उसके बाद स्कोप को डिफाइन करेंगे और फिर स्कोप स्टेटमेंट बनाएंगे अगर
ठीक
आप
है।
फर्स्ट टाइम प्लानिंग कर रहे हैं उसके
हाँ,
लिए पहले स्कोप स्टेटमेंट नहीं होती उसके लिए हम पहले रिक्वायरमेंट कलेक्ट करके और उसके बाद
ठीक
स्कोप
है जी,
स्टेटमेंट बनाएंगे लेकिन
ठीक है।
अगर रोलिंग प्लानिंग है पहले प्रोजेक्ट हो चुका है कई बार उसको दोबारा से हम कर रहे हैं
नहीं नहीं
तो
नहीं नहीं नहीं,
उसकी
no 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 no, I'm not saying that. During the same project, during the same project, you see, if you have started the planning for the first time, like your project has just started, and now you have started collection of the requirements, then you will define the scope, and then after completing all the planning you will start the execution. But obviously you cannot plan everything. 90% of the things you
जो
might plan, but you will leave 10% planning for the
डिफाइन
later
कर
planning, refine करने के लिए, or to add in this, right? So now this 10% planning, when time would come, you will get the enough information to complete this leftover planning and under the concept of progressive
यस
elaboration and rolling wave planning. Now it is in the same project. Like, let's say 4 months have passed now. So now you have got enough information and now you want to complete that leftover part. At that time, you will already have a scope statement with you,
ओके सर
right?
मतलब सर
So
उसी प्लान उसी अगर हम
project के अंदर, उसी project के अंदर.
प्रोजेक्ट
हम्म,
करें अगर हमारे पास 90% प्लानिंग पहले है तो हम 10% के लिए दोबारा प्रोग्रेसिव एलिब्रेशन और रोलिंग प्लानिंग जो हमारी रहेगी है वो
हाँ,
करेंगे
वो करेंगे बिल्कुल, ठीक है.
और उसके बाद
तो उस
के लिए फिर
उस
हमारे
वक्त
पास पहले
सुने,
स्कोप है
हाँ, उस वक्त होगी हमारे पास, राइट? at that time अगर जब आप वापस आते हैं डिटेल रिक्वायरमेंट्स एनालाइज करना शुरू करते हैं तो आप बेसिकली दोबारा कलेक्ट रिक्वायरमेंट प्रोसेस में आ जाएंगे ठीक है so at that time if someone gives you a requirement which is you know not included in the scope statement you need to compare them that shall it become the part of the scope statement or not and for that you need to check your business case and project charter again right and lastly
अगर वो सर फिर वो अगर मतलब हमारे पहले से चार्टर में या फिर बिजनेस केस में प्रेजेंट है वो रिक्वायरमेंट्स तो हम उनको
हाँ
फॉलो
हाँ
करेंगे
हाँ
अगर नहीं है तो फिर हम नहीं करेंगे
नहीं करेंगे like if I'm constructing a house and someone someone asked me to please later on yeah please add let's say an additional terrace or please add a lawn outside the house. So at that time, I would definitely look that, you know, uh, creation of that lawn is part of my project or not. And what would tell me that it is part of your project or not? Obviously, it would be project charter. This project charter tells you
सर
everything, right? So we will not entertain such a requirement without any additional, funding or any additional cost and time, obviously. And there too, if
ओके
my boss or the top management agrees, right? Now, practically what happens, many a times customer keeps, asking addition of the requirements. In that case, sometimes we entertain them, sometimes we don't. Like if that requirement is part of the charter, it comes under the charter. In that case, we'll have to, in any case, we will have to entertain that requirement. But if it is beyond that charter, it means now we are going to have extra cost and extra time because of this additional requirement, right? So at that time, depending upon the organizational strategy or policy, we may ask the customer, sir, okay, we will add this thing, but this will cost you extra. And I'm not sure if my team is available for another 1 month or not. You know, the bosses, the sponsor, the top management, they might have an other project planned for you as soon as you will finish or complete this project. In that case, even if customer is ready to pay you extra, you may not, agree to entertain or add in this extra requirement. But if there's no such constraint that your team can wait for other 1 month or can work on this project for additional 1 month, in that case, your sponsor or organization may try to you know, uh, please this customer and accept his or her request. But obviously, they will charge them extra too. Is it clear?
यस सर
Okay. Then,
Sir, it's clear. It's clear.
so now the next thing is project constraints. This is another thing that you need to see. You know, if you people would ask me, let's say, okay, sir, can we have a visit to some real life project, right? And we want to learn there. Let's say, and I tell you that look, 5 or 4 of the classes were already online up till now. So now, we are short of time. So if we will spend 1 day outside the classroom, we may not be able to cover the syllabus. Now, that is our constraint. So, that requirement might come under the charter. That is for a good cause. That is, that is aligned with the reason for which you are studying this course. But still, because of the constraints, I may not entertain that requirement. Is it clear?
Sir, clear.
Yes,
It's
sir.
clear. Because of
Okay.
यस सर
Because of the constraints. So now, and very important thing, like once we have collected all the requirements, we actually, document all those requirements. And the document that contains all our requirements is called as requirement documentation, right? It could be anything. Look, it could be just as one page, it could be just your handbook or notebook, sorry, or a diary on which you may write down all the requirements. Like in case of smaller projects, the builders, the constructors, they write down things on a diary, and sometimes they even don't write. They keep those requirements in their mind. However, it is recommended that you write it down somewhere, either on a page or on a diary in smaller projects. This is kind of an informal requirement documentation. However, if it is a large project, in that case, you may have hundreds of pages of formally written requirements, right? We'll just see what types of requirements could be there. For example, the project management requirement, the product requirements, the quality requirements, the legal requirements. So in such cases, you might have to write down everything, and this requirement documentation may, may be spread over, let's say, 100 pages or 1,000 pages, various volumes of the books. Is it clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now another very important, right, concept, and please, when I say very important, I cannot overemphasize it, but this is really crucial, and that is, in order to have your requirements precise, clear, understandable, measurable, traceable, you need to establish the acceptance criteria. This is very important. Actually, this is the thing that will help you at the end of the project in acceptance or rejection of your project. For example, if someone says, like, I'm using the local language here, uh, like, please make it, I mean, wonderful or awesome for me. Paint ऐसा होना चाहिए बस मजा आ जाए. Now, this is the thing, like paint should be such that, it should be awesome. Okay, how you will define this word awesome here? If I have painted the walls, now the customer would come and he or she would say, no, this is not awesome. And you would say, no, this is awesome. See, requirements should have the acceptance criteria. What is the definition of awesome here? Okay, how it would look like once you think it would be an awesome, right? So acceptance criteria, defining the acceptance criteria while documenting your requirement is very crucial, very important. This helps you towards end in acceptance or rejection of a project. In social sector projects, just imagine that if a proposal was sent to let's say government, and there the claim or that was made in the beginning was that we will have this will increase the uh, you know the employment opportunities in the area, let's say. So now how you will measure this? Can someone tell me? Or khushhali aa jayegi, right? The general economic situation of that region would improve. How you would measure that? So these are the requirements that need to have some acceptance criteria. For example, you need to tell that, okay, this number of new employment opportunities would be created, and how we are going to calculate those opportunities. Now this is the thing that would actually help you in acceptance or actually measuring your performance as well, right?
Sir, clear.
Okay ji. So now
सर
ji
टैंजिबल
ji
आउटकम्स को हम ज्यादा फोकस करेंगे ना
ji, sorry ma'am. Social sector वाले
सर
बोले ना.
जी मैं कहती इसमें टेंजिबल आउटकम्स जो है हम
हाँ,
उनको पहले से एक्सेप्टेंस लेवल मेंशन कर देंगे
बिल्कुल करते हैं, बिल्कुल करना चाहिए, right? So, and that is what is required. Otherwise, ambiguous requirement or requirements, they are that are very generic in nature. At that time, everybody may have a different perception about that, and that may result into a conflict towards end. So it's better that we keep a track of it, and we define it in a way that these requirements are unambiguous, traceable, complete, consistent, and acceptable to the stakeholders. Now, this is very important. Okay, now we also saw that we need to establish a link between, like in the previous slides, we saw that we cannot entertain every requirement that would be there. We just can't entertain every requirement. So that means we need to link the requirements with the various business objectives of the organization, with the objectives or purpose of the project as well, right? So this is very important. If some requirement has come to me, I need to see that, okay, how this requirement would contribute towards the overall strategic objectives or the business objective of the organization, and how it is linked with the purpose for which our project was initiated. Is it clear?
Sir.
Right. So to establish that link, we use a matrix, or we use an artifact that is called as a requirement traceability matrix, right? RTM. Requirement. We'll study this document in a while. Requirements traceability matrix in the coming slide. So this is the document that actually links every requirement with so many things. For now, so many things. Okay, actually there are too many things with which it links the requirement, right? So let me finish this one point that is still left towards the end. The the format of the requirement documentation could be just a simple document having a list of categorized, actually prioritized requirements, or it may have maybe in a more elaborated form, in which there could be an executive summary, then detailed description, then hundred of pages of attachments and drawings with it. So this is what a requirement documentation is. So during the requirement gathering process or collection of the requirement, we prepare a requirement document or requirement documentation in which we write down all the requirements. And an very important, thing that should be there in the requirement documentation is the acceptance criteria. Is it clear?
Sir, clear. It's clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, what
Mm.
what possible requirements could be there? As I told you, there are number of requirements that could be there. Obviously, that would depend on the nature and size or importance of the project, like business requirements. If your project is being carried out, maybe for your very own organization, let's say I've started a project for my own organization, let's say Bahria University. In that case, business requirements, what business requirements my university or my organization wants to achieve through this project, that I would be writing down. This is important. And actually, business case, will give me a starting point for that. Then the stakeholder requirements. For example, let's say if we are doing a construction work in the daytime, during the classes, and we are constructing a building, all the classes will get disturbed because of noise. There may be certain services that might not be available for a long period of time there. For example, let's say parking lot might not be available because of the material that is dumped there, or any other thing. So we need to look into all such requirements that different stakeholders might have, right? And this is important. This part is somehow ignored by us, means the project managers and team. They ignore this requirement. Their whole focus is the product requirement, what we need to construct. They keep gathering the details of the product only, but they don't look into other requirements that would be there coming from the stakeholders, right? There are many people, like just as a very layman or crude example could be, there was a house being constructed in my street, and this is a real-time example. Every now and then, uh, I mean, those 4 months, during 4 months, let's say 2 or 3 times a week, I had to face a problem that, you know, in the morning when I used to go to drop my kids to school. That time is very critical. Kids are getting late from the school, and I'm too. So in that case, you know, there would be a truck standing there, there would be a labor standing there, and they had, they would just unload all the material right in the center of the street. So you see, I was a stakeholder, the mahalledar, the neighborhood was a stakeholder of that project. So this kind of requirement should be considered, that their work should not hamper the activities of others. Similarly, if a construction work is being done in the university, let's say in our example that I was previously saying, there the noise that would be created, the dust that would be done there, or the material that would be dumped there. So this all is kind of a work which may actually hamper the work of many departments there. Is it clear?
Sir, sir.
Okay.
Clear, sir.
Stakeholder requirements clear.
Sorry, sir. Mali.
I understand that
Okay,
stakeholder
that's good.
requirement.
Okay. Next is solution requirements, right? Now this is particularly about the characteristics or features of that deliverable that we actually want to. Let's say if it is a software, what features are we expecting from that software? If it is a building, what would be the dimensions of the building? What would be the characteristics of that building? So this solution requirement, this may include the functional requirements, such as the features. Will this building have a lift or not? Will this building have a centralized air conditioners or what? How many floors would be there, and so on. So this is functional requirement. And in case of non-functional requirements, they are in addition to the functional requirements. For example, the environmental conditions or qualities required for the product to be effective, their reliability, security, performance, safety, and supportability, and so on. So these are non-functional requirements, but somehow they are linked with the solution requirements. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So please define the functional requirement again.
Functional requirements are product features. For example, if it is a construction project, in that case, what would be the functional features of that building? How many floors, right? Will lift be there or not? What lighting requirements would be there? Is it clear? So these are about the product that you are actually creating as a result of that project.
Okay, sir.
Okay, then comes the transition and readiness requirement. Sometimes, you need to uh, give some temporary, like for example, let's say if a road is being constructed, I guess some of you might have an experience of traveling to Islamabad expressway towards that is going towards Rawat. So that road is being constructed, right? So now there would be some requirements that till the time that road is not fully constructed, how to bypass that transport, how to manage the transport during that period could come under transition or readiness requirement. Similarly, delivering a thing to the to the customer might be part of it, especially if you are you have to, let's say, uh, develop a software or an automated system for an organization. And once that system would be installed or commissioned, in every computer system of that organization, like just imagine Berry University have so many offices, so many buildings in it, like any other organization might have. So in that case, how you are going to install that product, and during that how system would stop. Now a very classic example of it is, let's say if a bank, commercial bank, it wants to upgrade its entire banking system. This would include the ATMs and all the records and all the databases. So in this case, once a system is upgraded and installed and commissioned, during that time, you need to make certain arrangements so that the functioning of the work or the services that that bank is giving, those should not be stopped. Is it clear?
So these are actually the interim measures or the
Interim measures,
services
very
which
right.
you provide.
You provide. Very right, sir. Very right. So there could be any sorry,
Sir, I wanted to ask a question.
Gigi
The
ma'am.
quality requirements of the product or service are also functional?
Yes, you may say. Yes. In many cases, it is, right? Actually, but it would depend on the perspective. Sometimes, once we'll study the quality, planning, at that time I'll explain this, but just want to give you an overview. Look, sometimes customer, they tell you in general terms what are their requirements. For example, if I'm telling my constructor that, look, right now I need only 2 floors of this building. However, later on, I intend constructing 2 more floors onto it, but not now, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So in that case, it would be, and that person is not aware of the quality standards that must be ensured for, in the design and the construction of this building, to ensure that it should sustain a weight of 4 stories. So it would be me who would translate those vague requirements into quality requirements. Is it clear?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, but in many cases, like if this project is being done through a contract, let's say this is one organization, and this organization has got, this organization wants to get a building constructed from an outside vendor, from an outside builder. In this case, when these two organizations would go into a contract, at that time, in the contract, they would specify all the quality requirements separately, right?
Clear. Thank you.
Right. So in
Sir,
that case, it might be treated as a separate thing, but uh, essentially speaking, it is part of the functional requirements, right?
sir.
Okay. Right. Now comes the long-awaited requirement traceability matrix. This is very important. Please pay special attention to this. Look, actually, why I'm emphasizing on this, for large projects, this document could prove to be a very useful tool, right? People among you who have experience of managing large projects, in that case, the moment I'll explain this, you would actually find it very handy, very useful tool to keep a track of the requirements, right? So I'll just go directly to uh, a diagram here, and then I'll come back to these slides. I hope you can see this now.
So now it's visible here.
Yes.
Okay. So now, requirement traceability matrix, it helps you in what? It helps you to link the requirements. It helps you to link the requirements with what? With so many things actually. With the objectives, that is business objectives, project objectives, and other requirements, right? As well as with the person who had initiated this requirement, with the features that are dependent on this requirements, right? For example, now here is an example in front of you. This this tells you various objectives, right? This project is about, construction or uh, actually construction or development of a library in a community center, right? So this is an example in which they want to construct a library and uh, in a community center which will serve many purposes. So here the objectives are to improve access to the job resources by 20%. Actually, this library is part of a community center, a welfare center, which will serve many purposes. So one of the objectives is to improve the access to the job resources by 20%. Now you see, this is one of the objectives. So which requirement would actually affect this objective? Let's say we need to have newspapers in the reading area, right? So we need to have a reading area which will contain newspapers, which will actually have certain, job possibilities there, and so on. So this way actually, such kind of, we were able to trace a requirement with its objective. We may add many other columns here. We may add many other columns here. For example, we may add a column of originator of the requirement, from whom this requirement came. Similarly, we may also see, like this, in this particular requirement traceability matrix, if you see, we are trying to trace the requirements with its original objectives, or the objectives of the project which that requirement would serve. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right, right. So this kind of requirement traceability metric that link the requirement backward with the objectives is called reverse traceability. Is it clear?
So reverse traceability. Yes.
Reverse traceability, yeah, because this is linking, this requirement traceability matrix is linking the requirement backwards with the original objectives of the project. However, there are certain other types of traceability metrics. Let me show one by one. Just look at this requirement traceability matrix. Here is a requirement description: reduce cable building cost per linear foot by 15%. So here we say that, okay, which design document reference is linked with it. Then what is the charter reference? Like obviously, this requirement should be linked with the charter as well. Now, this is the part that is test case reference and user acceptance validation. These two things make this requirement traceability matrix as a forward traceability matrix. How? Now, how we would establish that this requirement is met? How you would establish that this requirement is met? For this, we actually define a test case that if so and so things happen, and then we would say that this requirement has been met. Is it clear?
So it depend upon the test case. We have to make a test case
We,
to define.
Yeah, yeah. This
first we'll
is
see the impact. We'll see the
the
impact of the
impact.
changes.
Very right. In your case, ma'am, we will try to assess that impact. But how you are going to assess that impact, it is that criteria that we'll write here. For example, just let me tell you one thing. Let's say if I'm trying to uh, develop a project web portal, let's say a web portal for our university, and one of the requirement is that students should be able to uh, pay their fee online from their bank, right? This is one of the requirements. Online payment feature should be there. So this requirement would be tested how? That we will write here. Here we have just write an abbreviation of that test, but obviously we'll define that test somewhere, and you'll carry out that test at the end when that feature or that product would be delivered to me. I will carry out this test. This would actually help me in ensuring that when user, like from user perspective, when user will come for acceptance, user will have a clear guideline, you know, to check various features or various requirements that he had delivered or he had shared with us or with the project team in the beginning, right? So this will serve as a checklist. Okay, this was one of the your requirements. Look, this thing is working. This is another requirement. Look, this is working. This is another requirement, and this was the test that we had decided that we'll test this requirement using this test case. So now just try it and see it is working, and then user will accept or reject it. Is it clear?
Right. Sir, pilot testing is the same thing?
No, this is a document. Look, this is a document, right? This is a document that keep a trace of it, whether during pilot testing or towards end.
Okay.
Right? This is a document or tool that you can use. Actually, whenever we go for user acceptance test, right? In that case, we carry out a process like that. We carry out a process like that. However, this document or this tool or this matrix that we are going to use, it is a very good tool to keep a track of maybe 100 of requirements. You know, when user is telling you lot many requirements, for example, the sometimes very minute detailed requirements. For example, when you deliver this thing, it should have a packing which should be clearly labeled this upside or this box contain a fragile item or something, because the customer might have a fear that once you will transport or ship this, you know, box of product that he has asked you to deliver to him or her, it may not break. So such things like upside and writing fragile or something, you see, these are the requirements that may be lost in a list of maybe 100 of requirements that the customer has given to you. So it's always better to record them in a way so that you can keep a track of it. Now, one thing that ma'am just said, actually, I had to explain it, but you know, that skipped my mind. No, I'll come back to that. And that is this tool helps you, especially when changes are introduced to your requirements. You see, if some, you know, at a later stage during a discussion, some of the stakeholders, your sponsor or anyone, tells you that, yeah, let's eliminate this requirement. I don't think this requirement is needed. So in case of reverse traceability metrics, that would easily tell me that, okay, if we eliminate this requirement, let's say, it will affect one of our project objectives. So are you ready for that or not? Is it clear?
So it is clear.
Right. So similarly, if a new requirement is requested that please add this requirement, we can very easily trace it back that, okay, will this requirement serve any of the project objectives or not? Correct?
Correct, sir.
राइट सर, ये समझ में
Right.
आ गया। ये रिवर्स एंड फॉरवर्ड ट्रेसेबिलिटी में जो फर्क है वो ये है कि आप फॉरवर्ड ट्रेसेबिलिटी में टेस्ट केस रेफरेंस को ऐड कर रहे हैं
Exactly.
और उस पे डिपेंड करते हुए आप अपने प्रोडक्ट को वैलिडेट कर रहे हैं यूजर
Exactly.
एक्सेप्टेंस।
Exactly. बिल्कुल सही हो गया. And in backward traceability metric, we are linking it back with the original objectives. Now, there's one more kind of traceability matrix that is bidirectional. It is the most comprehensive one. Now, have a look on this. First, read the line that is written in below in the green box. You see, here is the requirement in the center. This requirement would
It's covering
link, it's covering everything. Okay, which project objectives would be met or be affected by any changes in this requirement? And ultimately, which business objectives would be hit because of that? If this requirement is not met, or if this requirement is met, then which project objectives would be met or not met, or which business effective objective would be affected, project and business. And on forward path, it tells you that this requirement would be part of, or this would be translated into a particular deliverable. If we don't make this deliverable, That means we are going to compromise on this requirement. Similarly, how this requirement would be tested, like once we'll get that deliverable ready with us, how we will check that this deliverable is meeting that requirement. So this kind of requirement traceability matrix is the most comprehensive one, and it contains both the both the forward and the backward or reverse directions. Is it clear to everyone?
Thank you,
It's
sir.
clear,
I
sir.
have used and I was
You,
like
you
thinking we
uh,
have used the comprehensive one, so that's why I was confused with the
let us why this
backward
is
and
one
forward.
forward, right, right,
Yeah.
right. Okay. So now
Sir,
actually,
we
Just
Sir, Saramjit, please.
in the forward
say
direction, whether once the deliverable will be there and the test case will be there, whether the user satisfaction will be also be incorporated in the forward direction as well.
Yes, sir. Look, यही वो चीज़ है, sir. This test case would establish the user satisfaction.
Okay, that
Uh,
will
सर
be
इससे हमें पता चलेगा
integral
टेस्ट
part.
से कि रिक्वायरमेंट हुई है कि नहीं.
Exactly, exactly. Not only, look, this is a wonderful tool. This bi-directional traceability matrix is a wonderful tool in a way that now let's say during the development process, someone comes to you and say that, okay, yeah, we are getting tight in the schedule or we are getting tight in the budget, so let's remove this requirement. So this would help me immediately tracing something, and that is which project objectives would be compromised because of that. So are we ready for that or not? We can evaluate the effect of a change request based on this requirement traceability matrix. Correct?
यस सर. तब अगर हम कोई रिक्वायरमेंट ऐड कर रहे हैं तो उससे भी हमें पता चलेगा कि अगर हम प्रोजेक्ट
Exactly.
ऑब्जेक्टिव पे और
वो
अगर
उसके
हम
साथ
कोई रिक्वायरमेंट रिमूव कर रहे हैं तो फिर भी हमें पता चलेगा कौन से ऑब्जेक्टिव पे हमने कंप्रोमाइज करना है.
very right, very right. So changing any requirement, adding a new requirement, eliminating or deleting a requirement, everything can be, evaluated. The effect of all of them could be evaluated using this bidirectional traceability matrix. Is it clear? Now, another thing, let's say if this test case fails, where I have put a cross. Now, if this test case fails, at the end of the day, customer came and you are trying to, evaluate the requirement of, you are trying to validate your deliverable from the customer, get it validated from your customer, and this requirement is failed. So now we can very easily trace back things, right? Very easily till the original business objectives, correct? Because of the failure of this, we were unable to get the so and so project objectives and so business objectives. I hope this is clear.
Yeah. Sir, there's one question. If
जी मैम.
like the test cases that you're talking about,
Mhm,
they can be linked to one or like we're talking about a product or a particular area where
mhm,
the product has
mhm,
failed.
mhm,
So it may be the test case may be failed at two or three places with two or three requirements, or
very
it will
right.
be just for one.
No, actually, it would depend. Sometimes, look, sometimes one test case may affect multiple, deliverables, multiple deliverables.
Yes.
And
Yes.
sometimes one requirement can affect many others as well, right?
Yes.
Sometimes one requirement, actually, you may add as many columns here as you wish. You can write, okay, the stakeholder who initiated this requirement. You can also write the person who is responsible to keep, a track, or who would ensure that this requirement is fulfilled. For example, I can assign, okay, this would be the engineer. Chief engineer is responsible for this requirement. Finance member is responsible for this requirement. So and so person is responsible. So you can add so many things into it. But this Journal matrix is going to help you a lot. But please remember one thing, and that is for a large project in which you might have maybe 1000 requirements, you cannot write every detail here. Like just in case of WBS, and all of you know already know that what a WBS is. WBS is a hierarchical, diagram or structure that contains a generic name of various parts of your scope, right? Various deliverables or work packages. But the details of these items or these work elements are written where?
In the WBS
In
dictionary.
the WBS dictionary. Right, right. मैम का भी एक नंबर प्लीज CR. ये एक और भी मैम है जिन्होंने 3-4 दफा कमेंट किए, उनका भी लिख लें.
ओके सर।
कौन कौन है?
बढ़िया।
हाँ, ओके मैम लिख लीजिएगा बोलो. Okay, so now you see कि ये just like a WBS dictionary, we can have a detailed dictionary of requirement traceability matrix as well, right? For example, here in the last slide, it is just written test case. Okay, let me erase this all. Sorry. We have written TS001. So what is this reference? What is this test case? You can just open up that book or dictionary or something where you have written the details of this test, that this test TS001 pertains to so and so element, and in this we will actually check so and so thing, and if the number or the result is greater than this, we'll accept, or if it is less than this, we'll reject, or something to that effect. Correct? So details of it could be written somewhere else. Fine.
Right.
Right. So now if I ask you what a requirement traceability matrix is, it's just a grid, or it's a document or artifact or a tool or a matrix that helps us linking the requirements to its objectives or other requirements, or with the test cases, or with the originator of that requirement, or rather and with the test cases that would ensure that this requirement, or that would validate that so and so requirement has been met. Correct, Ji?
So correct.
Right. So now this is what all it is. Requirement. Let me just have a quick overview of it. If I've missed any point, so I will just explain. Sometimes requirements, okay, we cannot remember everything for large projects, especially. Okay, now it is not like it is not one individual who is remembering it. Having a requirement traceability matrix helps, so many organizations, agencies, and stakeholders that are involved on a large scale project. It would not be just one organization or few team members who need to keep a trace or record of all the requirements. There could be a project in which maybe 20, 30 different organization or members or team members from different organizations are working there. So everybody should be having a clear idea about the requirements which are related to those team members. So it is not just like you need to think of a large scale project where you will see the real magic or real power of this tool. Okay. So it also helps on evaluation of change request and what else?
So,
Have you,
sir,
जी मैम. Okay,
sir, अगर
जी मैम बोलो बोलो.
So, sir, in if like in case when the test case has failed,
Hmm.
what are we going to do with that requirement? Are we going to
Okay.
change it?
No, ma'am. That means that requirement was not met fully, right? For example, let's say I have received a car from, let's say, any showroom or maybe from any factory or company, and now there's a checklist or requirement traceability metric. This car was ordered by me right? And they have specially developed it for me, let's say. And now I'll have a requirement traceability method and check. Let's say I just wrote that it should have a temperature control, right? So now here, first I will run a test for an air conditioning, the cooling system. Then I will run a test for heating system, isn't it? Then I
Yes.
will run at night, in the daytime, in the winters, and all that, right? I'll simulate something like that, so that the all of it, like conditioning, air conditioning, the leakages, the the sealing, the rubber seals of the doors and everything. So I need to check all these requirements. Now, if one of these requirements could not be met, or this test fails, it means one of the features could not work properly actually. So
Mm.
what to be done? What to be done? I will ask the project team, or the organization who is going to deliver me this product, that look, this is not as per my requirement. So what this project team would do, if I'm right and this has actually happened, it means it is the failure of the team. So you need to rework, right?
Yeah.
You need to rework. And that rework
And
would be treated as an extra cost maybe, and this cost and time would be arranged from the management reserves. Because if you haven't identified it as a risk, that some of the requirements, if you have already identified it as a risk, that some of the requirement may not be fulfilled, and we might have to do some rework. And if you have not kept any contingency reserves for that, in that case you will go to management that look, we need to rework on one of the features, because one of the features, it didn't work or it failed.
so
Sir,
we'll
at
do a
7,
rework
there's a break. Have a
requirements.
break.
Sir, okay sir, we'll go to you, sir. Okay, so we'll मैम मैं आपका क्वेश्चन, ओके सर, everybody may leave, मैम मैं आपका क्वेश्चन आंसर कर देता हूँ, राइट? हाँ जी मैम, प्लीज, is it clear or no?
Time will.
No.
We'll meet
Uh,
at 7:30 again, sir. 7:30.
Okay, 7:30. Thank you, sir.
Yes, right. Okay, Allah Hafiz. जी मैम.
सर जी सर, मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि जैसे कि हमने रिक्वायरमेंट लिखा, फॉर एग्जांपल हमने कोई सोप प्रोड्यूस करना है, एक साबुन प्रोड्यूस करना है, और साबुन के अंदर जो हमने फ्रेग्रेंस यूज किया था, वो
हाँ.
हमने एक्सपेक्ट किया था कि ये फ्रेग्रेंस एट द एंड एग्जैक्टली यही, मतलब यही ऑर्डर देगा।
Exactly.
लेकिन ये हमने लिखा कि हमने जी XYZ परफ्यूम डालना है और उसकी ये कॉन्सेंट्रेशन होनी चाहिए एंड ऑल दैट, हमने वो लिखकर अपने इस वर्क प्लान में, रिक्वायरमेंट्स में डाल दिया।
Requirement में डाल,
एट
बिल्कुल
दी
ठीक है.
प्रोडक्ट आया और हमने उसको टेस्ट किया, तो हमें पता चला दूसरे प्रोडक्ट्स के ऐड होने की वजह से उसकी खुशबू बदल गई है।
बिल्कुल ठीक है.
तो अब हम क्या करेंगे? क्या हम वो रिक्वायरमेंट, क्योंकि अब ये मास प्रोडक्शन में जानी है, आगे चीज जानी है, और हमने पहले ही टेस्ट करके देख लिया कि इसका ऑर्डर सेम नहीं है,
बिल्कुल
इसका
ठीक है.
फ्रेग्रेंस सेम,
बिल्कुल सही है.
तो हम फिर क्या करेंगे?
You will rework, ma'am. Again, the thing is, you will rework, right? You need to revise your formula. This was the failure of the वो जो आपके chemically genius थे. This was their failure, because they didn't consider कि बाद में जब different chemicals आने हैं. Let me give you a practical example of it. I was working on a project, right, uh, in which we had to make a kind of smoke detector. वो ये होता था कि like in case of a search and rescue, operation, or in case of, let's say, if a ship is sinking or something, you should have a smoke marker. You will just throw that item, or that, uh, that thing into the water, and it would operate because of the moment seawater would touch it. So let's say, or you will just pull a trigger, and it would start making a smoke, a specific color smoke, right? And it should keep working or keep generating that smoke for 120 seconds, that is 2 minutes, right? So once this product was developed, the time for which it worked was 90 seconds, right?
Okay.
and the smoke, the color of smoke had to be strong orange color, right? But it was not orange. It was like a very lighter version of the orange color. So we didn't accept that. We didn't accept that. And then again, this all project went into, again, they tried to, uh, our chemical engineers, they tried to, try figure out the fault, why this happened. And actually that was, just bad of it. They couldn't see the effect of seawater which diluted certain items or something, right? And this is one thing, and then combination was not in, in appropriate proportions, so they had to rework, right? So that project was delayed again for 6 months because they had to come up with a better formula this time. So this test failed, right? This is just as simple as if you cook something and when you taste it, you know, it turns out to be a bad dish, a bad taste. In that case, you have two choices: make some changes into it and improve the taste. If uh, it may not, or it may lack enough amount of salt. So just pinch some salt and recook. That would be a smaller rework. But if everything is, it is too bad, in that case, you'll have to recook. So it is just a rework.
Right, sir.
Right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So welcome, ma'am. So we'll meet again, everyone, at 7:30, inshallah.
Okay. Thank you,
Allah
sir.
Hafiz. Allah Hafiz.
Subhanallah.